say the game is getting old. Monday morning and your coffee's cold. Life is not what you want it to be.
Hi everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and I'm going to tell you something. Today I have, I talk about doing like great shows and amazing shows and fantastic shows and unbelievable shows, but today is one of those incredibly in-depth, powerful shows. And it's one of the shows, I've never been on the show. I've never been afraid to tackle hard subject matter. And today we're going to tackle something that we need to talk about it. Because you know what we do, folks? When it comes to certain subject matter, we kind of want to ignore it because we don't want to acknowledge that it's there. And that's not who I am. I'm just not, I've never been that way. I'm not going to be that way. I believe that if there is a subject matter that needs to be brought to the forefront, that we're going to do that. And today we're going to talk about survivors of domestic abuse. SODAs. Yeah, SODAs. That's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to tell you something. The statistics are staggering. All right. Did you know that one in four are going through some sort of domestic abuse right now? As I'm talking to you. Matter of fact, all the people who are joining me on the show, there could be somebody who's actually joining me on the show who may be in the middle of a domestic abuse situation. Do you know 10 million children are affected by domestic abuse? Did you know that? The fact of the matter is that we have an epidemic of domestic abuse. When we get to 1 in 4 people, that's an epidemic. All right. And so my guest today is a SODA. She is a survivor of domestic abuse. Matter of fact, she has created this charity. By the way, you can find it. It's thesoda-pop.com. And you can find out about the charity of survivors of domestic abuse. And her name is Susan Sparks. She's written this unbelievable book. It's entitled Sparks in Love by Susan Sparks. And she's going to be with us today. And I want to tell you that her story, first of all, is not just tragic, but it's an amazing story. And we're going to talk to her today. And what our goal here on A New Direction is to help people find a new direction in their life, their business, their career. And so today I'm going to help people. Susan and I are going to try to help you, maybe help someone be supportive and help them come up with a plan to help them overcome domestic abuse. And so I'm really excited to do the show only because I know that one of the goals of the show is to help as many people as possible. And when I think that we're going to be able to help somebody today and also people who will listen to this podcast perhaps get out of a domestic abuse situation, that excites me. And I know it excites Susan as well. But before I do that, and before I introduce her, and we start talking about this, I want to do what we do every week. And that is I want to check in with you at the 4 areas of your life. I believe firmly that we are 4-part people. We are physical people, we are mental people, we are emotional people, and we are spiritual people. And so let's talk about it. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being I can't get any better, where are you at physically? Right? We're coming out of the new year, and you probably have some New Year's resolutions, and you've probably gone to the gym. So maybe you're feeling pretty good, right? Maybe you're 6, maybe you're 7, maybe you're starting to meet some of your weight loss goals, right? So where are you at? Maybe you're eating better, right? So whatever that is, where are you at physically? Scale of 1 to 10, right? 1 being miserable, 10. Got it? Okay, good. It's your first number. Second number is mentally where are you at? What are you feeding your brain? What are you learning? What are you doing to expand your brain? Maybe you had a resolution that, you're going to read a book a week. I have a friend who that's his goal. He's going to read a book a week. And that's what he's doing to fill his brain. And, some people are taking up a new instrument. I have a friend who's decided he's going to go to golf school and he's going to learn to play golf. Now you say, well, that sounds physical, but it's also a mental challenge as well. So he's learning something new. He's learning a new skill. And so you may be learning an instrument or a new language. Those are all things that feed you mentally. And so what are you doing? Scale 1 being miserable, 10 being it couldn't get any better. How are you doing mentally? How are you feeding your brain? Okay, got it? Good. So you got 2 numbers. You got the physical, the mental. Third, what are you doing emotionally? How are we doing? Scale 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being awesome. How are you emotionally? And what I mean emotionally, I mean like, how are the little things? Do the little things bother you where you can't control your emotions very well? Are you able to relate to other people's emotions? How well are you doing that? Right? And the whole thing about emotions is its intention, right? Because we can overcome our emotions. And I've used this with my psychology classes when I used to teach psychology. I used to tell them, I said, you could kick me in the shin. I have a choice in how I'm going to respond emotionally to you. You know, we don't have to respond just because somebody does this. I don't have to respond this way. So I have a choice. So how are you doing in your emotions? All right. And then finally, how are you doing spiritually? And what I mean spiritually is what gives you a sense of peace? What gives you a sense of joy? I didn't say happiness, joy. Sense of peace. What is that thing that you rely on that makes you centered, brings you back to center? And I have a lot of people say, well, I don't believe in God. Okay. Well, I'm not pushing God on you. But maybe it's nature, maybe it's karma, maybe it's something else that you believe in that's outside of yourself that gives you some sort of spiritual strength and renews you. I mean, and if it is God, I'm going to ask you that question. How are you doing with that relationship personally in your spiritual life, right? So what is your number spiritually right now? Okay, you've got those 4 numbers. And remember, the 4 numbers are like the legs of a table that you eat from, right? If the legs are uneven, it's kind of hard to keep the plate on the table. If the legs are too low, it's kind of hard to sit in a normal chair and eat from that table. So the whole idea is to bring those up little by little. I'm not trying to get you from a 3 to a 10. I'm trying to get you from a 3 to a 4. So you got those numbers this week? All right, awesome. So let me introduce my next guest, because I got to tell you, my next guest is amazing. Her name is Susan Sparks. She's intelligent. She successful in the business world. She was abused, oppressed at home. She's realizing then she extricated herself at great physical, emotional, and financial harm. She realized that, like so many others, she needed help, and she has since formed the Soda Pop Foundation, dedicated to those who need help to get on with their lives from domestic abuse. Susan's here with us today to tell us part of her story, at least, and provide insights and tips for those who are still victimized by domestic abuse. And by the way, if it's you or somebody else that you know, this program is to help you and to help them to be able to get on and get going and move on from this. And so I want to first of all let you know that Susan is brought to you today by Inline Business Brokers and Advisors. Inline helps all sorts of people find and sell and buy a new business. Literally, they've helped thousands of people, and they are the best there is in the business. So if you want to learn more information, just go to inline.com. That's ENLIGN.com. And she's brought to us today. So Susan Sparks, welcome to A New Direction.
Thank you so much, Jay. I'm so honored to be here today.
So this is a tough subject matter. Domestic abuse. We don't like talking about it, do we?
No, absolutely. And, something you said struck me, so many things you just said struck me. But the thing that was, people don't think about this 1 in 4. What does that mean? Right. And it is difficult to talk about, but if you just start there at kind of ground zero, if it's not you, it's someone you know.
Right.
And so people are saying, well, it's not me. It's not me. This doesn't apply to me today. Well, but then it's somebody you know. Statistics are going to tell you it's someone you know. Right. And it's something we don't like to talk about. I did such an amazing job hiding it that when I finally did come out and talk about it, it shocked everyone I knew. So the reason that I think it's so important that we talk about it is because people don't want to, and they need help, and they are not necessarily aware of the help that is out there for them, because I wasn't. So when you talk about taking your life in a new direction, one of the things that we need to know in order to do that is, how do we do that, and where do we go, and where do we start? We need to know that there's help out there if we're stuck in our situation.
I agree with you. I'm holding up the book. I know you can't see that, but I'm holding up the book so everybody can see on Facebook Live right now. This is the book. It's Sparks in Love by Susan Sparks, and you can see that it's. I've worn this thing out reading it, and I'm going to be completely, totally vulnerable and honest with you, Susan, and the audience that's listening. And by the way, we've got a bunch of people. I cannot possibly name all the people who are watching the show live right now, watching me live on Facebook Live. Thank you so much, all of you, for watching and listening to the show, and also all the podcasters podcast people who listen to the show. Thank you for listening. I cannot thank you enough. Tell your friends, please. So I read this book, Sparks in Love. I'm going to be really honest with you, Susan. It was one of the most difficult books I've ever read. and not because it was hard. It wasn't that because you wrote it and it was hard to read. It was hard for me to read. I literally started the book, and it was like 10 pages, and I had to put it down. I was like, okay, I can't do this. I cannot do this. Matter of fact, every part of me wanted to cancel the show because the book was so hard. And so then I read another 10 pages, and I'm like, oh man, I can't do this. She's killing me. She's killing me inside because this was so hard to read. And I know you wrote this book for women. You mentioned that in the very beginning of the book, who you wrote this book for. But I want to encourage guys to read this book, and let me tell you why. The reason why I want guys to read this book is because typically we're the abusers. Overwhelmingly. Not typically, overwhelmingly we're the abusers. And after reading this book, I went to my wife and I said, look, I know that you and I are great, and I'm not one of these folks. I'm in that 75, the 3 that don't. But I said it made me really think hard about, the words that I use. And I said, I know that we're always good about apologizing to each other if we ever hurt each other and everything like that. But it really brought to the forefront, the words that I use in any relationship. And so first of all, thank you for writing the book. But it's so powerful. It was so powerful for me to read it that it was hard. And yet at the same time, I think it was probably something that struck me so hard that I appreciate you writing it. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate your response to that. Of course, it was very difficult to write.
Oh, sure.
I'm a writer. I love writing, and I never thought I'd be writing about the darkest and toughest parts of my own life. I'm a journalist by trade. I'm a reporter. And so, I thought I'd be reporting and writing about other people. I didn't think I'd be the subject matter. But, part of the background of that is when I left my marriage and I did escape, and I learned so many lessons about that. I went and I looked for a book that would help me feel better about what I had been through, that other people had been through that they had stories that looked like mine, that I wasn't alone, that I wasn't the only one, because the first thing that abusers do to us as victims is they isolate us.
Right.
So we do feel like the only one out there. We feel like the last person standing. Right. We look out there, everyone else's lives look great, we're the only ones. And they make us feel diminished and weak, and they take away our power, so we really do feel so completely isolated. And so when I went to look for a book, because we all turn to books, I think, so often for that, I couldn't find one that I could connect with, that I could say, hey, there are other people out there. Hey, this did happen to someone else. That's their story. I can find my story in theirs. I feel better. Here's a way to connect with them, on the internet. It doesn't stop when this book ends. There's more to it. And I just started thinking, what can I do to help? I'm a writer. Okay, here I go. I'm going to write. And it's not my story so much, because you've read the book, but for people who haven't read it yet, it's not written to be a story about me. It's written to be a story about what domestic abuse looks like and what it looked like in my life. So I really tried to isolate the 15 different warning signs of domestic abuse and then kind of tell stories from my own life about how they showed up in my life.
Yes.
And early on, when I didn't understand what they were, until the end when I knew what it was, so that when other people read it, they could say, oh, yeah, I know exactly what that is. Now what do I do? Or, oh, yeah, I was there too. Okay, I wasn't the only one. And so I appreciate your reaction to it. I certainly didn't write it to evoke any type of emotions that would be negative for anyone.
Right.
But my complete intent in that was that by the time people get to the end, they say, well, she did it. She made it through. She's no better. She's no different. I can get through that too. And that was really why I did it.
Yeah, and you make that so clear in the book. And one of the things, by the way, every chapter that she writes it starts off with some warning sign of one of the warning signs of domestic abuse. Like they keep you, discourage you from seeing friends, or family members, or shows extreme jealousy of your friends, and time spent away. And then she relates a story how her now ex-husband, actually played the role, because when so the book is kind of an interesting book, by the way. I love what you did here, because you pull yourself away and you look at sometimes the little girl of who you were, and then you bring it forward and saying, almost like, oh my gosh, how did I miss this? How did I not see this? And yet at the same time, you were almost like, at times you would say, if I could go back and tell her, no, don't go there, don't do that, don't. You just really brilliantly looked at both sides of yourself. I felt the earlier side of yourself, and then looking back from where you're at now, and I thought that was brilliant, by the way.
Thank you so much. And I think there's kind of two reasons I did that. One is because I feel like there's a point in my life where I did break off from where I was. I was whole. I was going on a path where, I was educated and I was finishing college, and I didn't need a man. I wanted a man in my life, right? And we always talk about, what have we done wrong as victims? Right. We haven't done anything wrong.
Right.
We fell in love with the wrong person.
Right.
And we don't see that coming as victims. And so it's so important for us not to blame ourselves, but to understand that at some point you're walking down a path and life looks great and, everything seems to be lining up for you. In my case, it was. And I fell in love with the wrong person. And so I flash back in the book a lot to kind of say, why did that happen? And why in the beginning did I ignore the warning signs? Did I not know what they were? Did I push them down? Did I miss them? I came from a great loving home, a very normal childhood. So I think, something that we kind of break a stereotype also in this book, that you come from abuse, you go to abuse. I think that can be true. But I think when you look at 1 in 4 women, I think we're kind of learning you can come from anywhere and walk into abuse.
Sure.
And that's really an important lesson for everyone. You're not broken. Your life isn't broken. You haven't done anything wrong.
Right.
You just fell in love with the wrong person, and you missed the warning signs, and you stayed. Okay, now what are you going to do?
Right. And I think, what you say pretty early on in the book, the typical question that I know that a lot of people are asking themselves right now, and are asking them where they're at, and you actually say, do not ask somebody who is a survivor of domestic abuse. Never ask them why they stayed in, because you really don't know why you stayed in. I mean, there could be 100,000 reasons why you did, but it doesn't help the survivor. And I thought that was such an enlightening thought process, because our natural human instinct, our natural human curiosity says, well, I want to know why she did. Why did she spend 20 years in this relationship? But that's right. Really the wrong question, right?
It is absolutely the wrong question. And for so many reasons, it goes to the victim blaming and the victim shaming. And we don't want to do that to victims, because if we perpetuate that, then we're going to talk less and less about this topic, and our victims are going to be less willing to come forward and ask for help. So that's the number one reason we don't do it. But when we're on the other side as survivors of domestic abuse, there's a couple of things that fall out of it. One is, it's kind of up to us to figure out why we stayed and why we didn't leave before we actually left. But something that a lot of people who haven't been victims of domestic abuse or violence don't realize is what it's like on the inside. On average, the National Domestic Violence Hotline will tell us the statistic. On average, it takes about 7 times to try to leave before someone's actually successful in getting out. Why? Why? Because what does it look like on the inside? We're threatened with our lives. We're threatened that we won't see our children again if we leave. We're threatened that our pets will be taken away. Our access to money is cut off. People don't understand that it's not just our partner or our spouse saying to us, I don't think you're attractive. I don't like that dress. And we can just get in our car and drive away. That would be pretty easy, right? So it's actual, imminent danger. It's a threat to our lives. And so even when people try to leave early on and they turn around and they walk back into that situation, sometimes they find it's easier to stay than to go. And that's why I do what I do, because I want everyone out there who hears me and who understands what I just said, because first I want you to know I understand how you feel if you're inside. I was there. And people don't understand, if they haven't been there, what it's like to go to bed at night with someone and hope that that person won't kill you when you're sleeping. There's no worse feeling. I get that. But this is what I know now that I didn't know then.
Right.
There are professionals trained who will get you out, who understand that your abuser is going to try and take away your money and will threaten you and try and take away custody of your children. It will not happen. It will not happen. The threats are empty, for the most part. The threats to your safety are valid, and you need to take them seriously, and that's why you cannot leave without help. You have to get help.
This is the book. It's called Sparks in Love. We're talking with the author, Susan Sparks. She is a SODA. She is a survivor of domestic abuse. She's created a charity called thesoda-pop.com, and you should check it out. I highly recommend that you will. And by the way, on the write-up on my site, I will also put those links out so that you can access those links to the soda-pop, and you'll be able to access that, and also be able to get find where you can get a copy of this book. By the way, it's brilliantly written. It's a I'm gonna be honest again. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. Folks who know me, you know that I am this weightlifting, former football guy, and I stand about 6 feet 5 inches tall and about 255 pounds. I'm gonna tell you, this book made me so mad. I wanted to find this guy. I really did. I made me so mad. It made me so mad. I'm gonna tell you, and she's so gracious because she said, "I'm just gonna leave it in God's hands and let vengeance be His." But I got to tell you, there's a part of me that wanted to be the angel avenger. Okay, I just want to let you know that right now, because I was so angry at this guy, and so. And I have to be honest with that, because I was getting angrier and angrier as I read the book. But I'm going to tell you something that she writes in this book that I want everybody to hear. First of all, if you are in a situation, if you're in a domestic abuse situation, or you know someone who is, first of all, I'm just going to read four words. You don't deserve this. Period. You don't deserve this. She writes it over and over and over again. You don't deserve this, and that you got to remember this: strength plus support plus a plan equals freedom. You got this. She says, and it's such a beautiful reminder. And I loved that part. And by the way, Susan and her book Sparks in Love is brought to you by Inline Business Brokers and Advisors. If you're looking to buy or sell a business, contact the folks at Inline. It's ENLIGN.com. I thought, Susan, at the end of every chapter, you kept hammering home, you don't deserve this. Strength plus support plus a plan equals freedom. You got this. I just felt I hammered so hard in my head, because I think one of the things that was so clear in this book was that you felt like one of your biggest mistakes is you didn't have a plan.
That was absolutely my biggest mistake. It was, you live with it, you live with it, you live with it. And then in my case, one day I woke up and said, I'm not living with this anymore. Just, that's it. I'm out. And it was the worst way to handle it. And ultimately, I paid for that with my own safety. I was injured on the way out. I didn't ask for help. Help was everywhere around me, but I didn't know. And, I think just the beauty of being able to be on a show like this and people hearing this is to be able to say, help is all around you, whether you know it or not. You have the sodapop.com. You have the National Domestic Violence Hotline. You have information everywhere. And the most important thing that people should take away today is if you're in danger, call 911. That's why it's there. We just feel so isolated and so alone with domestic abuse and violence that I kept hammering that point home so that if people were inspired by the book or inspired by anything in their life and said, okay, that's it, I'm going, that they would stop in that moment and say, I'm going, let me channel this energy now to do research, get information, make a plan, and go safely. That's what I want for everyone.
I think what's really, really important here is that the people who are listening to the show, whether they're listening to watching us live, and by the way, we had a little live glitch. I apologize for the live glitch that we had. We had a little bit of a glitch going on with the video, but we're back. But for people who are listening to the podcast, folks, there are so many places that you can go to get help. Don't wait. You don't have to be frozen in time. There are I know, like, we have a place called Interact here in our area that you could contact that will help you if you're in a domestic abuse situation. And so, and like you said, the police, there are just so many different ways that you could get help and get a plan, because my gosh, folks, don't, I don't know how else to say this, but if you're thinking about it, call somebody. Is that safe? Is that a good way to phrase it? I mean, if you're starting to think about it, then you're probably on your way to a plan.
I think so. And, I'd like to add to that, if it's okay, Jake,
Sure.
I think there's a really important thing that I glossed over and really want to take a step back and say.
Sure.
People can say, you know what, it's so easy for you, Susan, because you were educated and you had a career. Let me take a step back and say, I grew up in a very humble household. I've kind of lived every life. And the resources on my site, when you go to get help, they are free. They are free state coalitions. They are free telephone numbers. There are free legal resources that will help you learn how to get protective orders. All of that is free. Everything is free, because that's where we need to start. It doesn't matter what money you have access to or you don't have access to. When you have a lawyer working on your behalf and a state coalition working on your behalf and the National Domestic Violence Hotline working on your behalf, that's the team you want. And that's the team you need. And none of that will cost you any money. So that's how you make your plan. And that's the most important thing I want everyone to realize. I'm talking to everyone from a place of, we all come from different places, but I understand that people may or may not have access to resources. And in my case, I was also a victim of something that people may or may not be aware of called financial abuse, where my access to money was completely cut off. So I understand what it's like to try and make a plan and wonder if I'm going to have any money to be able to move forward. I understand. I'll just put it that way. I understand the obstacles that we can be looking at, making a phone call or even chatting. And you can connect from the Soda Pop on my Get Help page directly to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, to their chat function, or to their, you can call them. And you can start right there. And all it takes is a little bit of your time. And as soon as you start to have information, you're forming your plan and you're forming your team.
That's awesome. By the way, we're talking with Susan Sparks, author of the book Sparks in Love, and she is a SOTA. She is a survivor of domestic abuse. And we're talking about domestic abuse today on A New Direction. And the reason why we're doing that is because, folks, that's what the show is about. The show is about helping people find a new direction in their life or their business or their career, and we're focused on life, because one out of four people are experiencing domestic abuse, right? Most of them, and really females, are experiencing the domestic abuse more so than males. I'm not saying that males don't, because certainly they can, but really mostly females who are experiencing domestic abuse in their homes. And they're hiding it, and they'll put on a good face. One of the things I found so remarkable about the book was the fact that here all this craziness was going on in your home, and yet you were able to function in your job. And let me finish. Not only were you functioning in your job, you were cooking the meals, going shopping. You were under the threat of not being a penny over the monthly budget, even though you were bringing in all the money, right? Because he was pursuing some wild dream that was doing nothing. And so here you were taking care of the kids, making sure everything was done. Meanwhile, Mr. Garbage Pail, sorry, I just got to do it because I couldn't help it, but he was sitting at home, doing nothing. So, I'm thinking about this. I'm like going, oh, wow. Because you were able to keep it together. In front of all these people. That blew my mind.
And I appreciate that. And I think there's two things that come out of that. One is we don't have any other choice.
Right.
That's the life that we've accidentally fallen into. And until we decide to leave and reach out for help, it's something that we own and we carry on our shoulders. And it's an incredible burden to carry alone. And when I talk about reaching out for help, it's a great feeling when you do unburden yourself, but I do want to caution people about turning first to family and friends. You really do want to turn to the professionals, because oftentimes people say, well, I'm going to start telling my family and friends love us and they want to help us, but they're not trained to give us the advice that will keep us safe. And sometimes when we involve them, we accidentally endanger their safety as well. And so I think it's really important to think about that. When we're ready, we really need to talk to the advocates who are trained to help us. And then, of course, rely on our, support network of our family and friends when we get to the other side, which is hopefully very quickly we get out, we're somewhere safe, right, and we tell everyone what we've been through, and we reunite from the people we've been isolated from and start to rebuild our lives. But the other part that comes out of that, Jay, is that people will look at victims and say, my gosh, how weak, someone took over their lives and put them down and they fell prey to that. And what I say to that is, how strong do you have to be to make it through that and remain intact and go to work and make meals and pay your bills and get out of bed every day? We're pretty strong individuals, and it's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's almost something to reflect upon your own self and say, you know what? I must be pretty damn strong because I'm still here. And if I'm still here, I got some fight in me. I got enough fight in me to get out of this. And I think that we lose that perspective when we're trapped.
Yeah, we're talking with Susan Sparks, author of the book Sparks in Love, and we're talking. She's a SODA survivor of domestic abuse. I think the thing is, and I personally have been in a relationship where, in my past, not my current, because my wife is amazing and loving and kind and sweet, and she's awesome, and I adore her dearly. And we've been together 20 years, and she gets better every year. But I've been in relationships prior to that where the person I was with literally said, you don't need your friends. If I'm not good enough, if I'm not good enough for you, and why do you need friends? Aren't I enough? Right? And I remember you were saying something in the book about how, something to the effect of, you want to love this person, and there's a part of you that, knows that this is wrong, but you're willing to get rid of your friends for their sake. It's weird. It's a weird thing that happens in your head, because I can remember literally getting rid of all my friends, and literally because I was like, oh, you know what? She's right. I don't, why do I need them when I got her? And I heard you repeat this, And I literally was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, oh my gosh. This is what happened. I had a small amount, and I'm a guy. I'm a large man, and I let that happen to me, and I allowed it, right? Because I was like, I don't know what was wrong with me. And if people ask me, well, why did you do that? I don't have an answer for you. I don't. You could say I was weak. You could say whatever you want to say, but that's as close as I can relate to any part of your story. And I couldn't even come up with an answer of why I did that. But you spoke to it, and that's what made the book even more powerful to me, because it was like, oh my gosh, really?
And I so appreciate that you said that, because so in your situation, this is such a great thing to talk about. It's an early warning sign. It's a red flag for domestic abuse. Does it mean you were dating someone that was going to necessarily be a domestic abuser? I don't know. You don't know. You didn't say. Right. And what I write about in my book with that, and I really try to draw a distinction there, is I said, I did it the first time in high school, right? Because we have our first love, and I said it's a classic rookie mistake, right? We lose all our friends because we want to spend all our time with our first boyfriend or girlfriend, and it's where we want to be. Right. And we're not good to our friends, and we make that decision, because my high school boyfriend was a sweetheart, and he kept saying, don't you want to see your friends, or do you want to include your friends? So it was definitely not him manipulating me or isolating me. It was me making that rookie mistake, saying, no, I just want to spend all my time with you. Right. And I paid the price the first time. I lost all of my best friends. Right. The second time it came around, when you thought I would have learned something from that. Right. The second time it came around, now it was forced on me. I had this incredible network of friends in college that I've spent my college years with, and he's saying, they're not good enough for you. Right. You're wasting your time with them. They're an embarrassment to us when we go out. Right. I just want to be with you. If you really loved me, you'd only want to be with me. Right. Those are the things they say to us that we should stop and think about, what does that mean? And I think for a lot of people, younger people, college age, teenage, we don't necessarily stop and think we may not be with that person forever, especially when you're younger and you're in high school. You may not be with that person forever. Right. And if you're not, who are you going to be with on Friday and Saturday night if you guys break up? Right. Because, just flashing forward a little bit, when you lose your friends, what happens? Right. It's difficult. So also for the fact that we should always love our friends and respect them. Sure. But if you're thinking of it just from your own perspective, you just want to get that balance in your life where you're fair and true to everyone. Mm-hmm. And if someone is telling you that the people that are around you who love you and you love them unconditionally shouldn't be in your life, that's a warning sign.
Yeah. Listen, this was, later in, before I married Linda in my life, but it was later. I was older, and I can remember the jealousy and the idea that, why do you need them? Why are they support? Am I not important enough to you? Don't I give you enough? And I remember hearing those things and going, oh, you know what? She's probably right. I probably, I'm a little later in my age. She's right. I need to just stop hanging around with them because they probably aren't good for me. She's probably right. They're probably not good for me. They're probably not the people I should hang around with. I need to get rid of them. And you know what? She's right. I need, if she was really all that she is, I don't need them. I just need her. And you know what? Her jealous fits of rage. Okay, well, you know what? That's probably me. I probably just, I probably did just, probably, went over the line. I just didn't realize it. So, I just need to be very more careful, right? Do you hear what I'm saying to myself during that, right? And I was listening to you as you're reading and describing this in the book, and I'm going, oh man, yeah, oh boy, yeah. And I was like, and I don't think when you're in it, you don't know it. You don't see it that way. When you're out of it, and you look back at it, you go, oh my gosh, she was sick, and I fell into it. And I think,
and it's very easy to fall into,
oh my gosh,
right? It's so
yeah.
easy to fall into, because when you care about someone, you want them to be happy. You
Yes.
want to please them. They're asking you to do something.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of psychology there, right? A lot of manipulation. And you're thinking, and I think this is implied also with manipulation. What happens if I don't do that?
Right.
Is she leaving? Is he leaving if I
Right.
don't give up my friends? Because it sounds like from what you're saying,
Right.
that's what you were thinking, or she might have said that to you.
Right. Yeah.
So,
No. Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like an ultimatum. So give up your friends or I'm out. Okay, that's a problem.
Right.
I think we talk a lot, and I talk a little bit about this in my book also, and I'll be talking about it as much as I can in the future. What is the difference between healthy love, and abusive love? And I think in a healthy relationship, if someone starts pressing, for more of your time, and you can have an honest dialogue and say, you know what, I really care about you too, but I need that boys' night out, and I need that time with my friends. So what's a good balance? Let's make a negotiation. Let's say what's comfortable to you, what's comfortable to me. How do we meet in the middle?
Right.
And they can have that conversation with you, and everybody can walk away happy, knowing that no one's given up anything, but that you're honoring one another's, requests without sacrificing something that's important to you. Then you're in a healthy place. Mm-hmm. But if there's no compromising from them, and it's all about fear and intimidation and control, those are red flags. If only one side is bending and it's you,
right.
Those are red flags.
What a beautiful thing. I think that's a beautiful thought that you just had here, because I think, honestly, if I were to reflect back on it psychologically in my own life, and I'm wondering if you feel the same way because you brought it up, did I really know what the difference is between a healthy relationship and an unhealthy relationship? I know I'm in a really healthy relationship right now, right? I don't know that when I walked into it that I knew it was healthy, but certainly I know, going forward, I know the difference between what a healthy relationship is and what an unhealthy relationship is. And I wonder how many people are listening to the show. I wonder if they think to themselves, what does that healthy relationship really look like? Am I really in that healthy relationship? And I think what you just described there is beautiful, is that in a healthy relationship, we can negotiate, we can talk, we can have an honest conversation without anybody being upset. We can just have a conversation that says, look, I love you, but I really want to be able to hang out with my friends and do this. Right, I'd like to go to the football game, or you know what, we want to go see a movie together. Right, the girls and I want to go out and see a movie together, or we'd love to go out. We're gonna plan on doing a girls' night where we're gonna go shopping together, and then we're gonna go see a movie. Right, and we could talk about that. And I think that's just one part of it, though. I think there's other parts that help us, because the person who's not healthy, the abuser, and I want to talk about the abuser from a second, because I feel like I can, not because I am one, but because because men do it. I think because men don't understand how abused they are. And I don't think they understand sometimes, as intentional as they are in their abuse, I often wonder where they learned that from. Because I don't believe it comes from nowhere. I believe they learned that behavior somewhere. Do you not agree or no? What do you think?
I think you're bringing up the age-old and incredibly important question, I think, of nature versus nurture. And I think, I almost think it's situation specific. I think you can look at someone's upbringing, and I think sometimes you can look at someone's genetics. And I've talked to different psychologists that will argue both ways.
Right. Sure.
And for me personally, I'm not a psychologist. So I could definitely, give you my opinion as just an individual person. In my specific case, I feel like my ex-husband was wired that way, and then his environment set him off to become that person. So I agree with what you're saying wholeheartedly, but I also feel that if you're wired, so now I'll give you a different example. My brother is one of the kindest people, if not the kindest, I've ever met. And in a tough environment, I believe in my heart he'd still come out as that kind individual. So I know there's a lot of psychologists that have studied things like narcissistic personality disorder and levels of hormones in bodies. Mm-hmm. And then I know that there are a lot of psychologists that have studied upbringing and society and what are we teaching our children and what are we not teaching our children?
Right.
And what is that creating in our lives for all of us when they become adults?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question. You're right. The question has been around nature versus nurture has been around in the psychology field. As a psychology professional, it's been around, as long as I've been teaching psychology. And matter of fact, way before I was teaching psychology, way before I was even born, they were battering around nature versus nurture. And I think, we try to understand the abuser. We understand their patterns of behavior. We understand some things personality-wise that they tend to fall into. And, personality is a weird thing because it's just categories of behavior based on how often you do something. And if it is not in the normal population, we consider it abnormal. So if it depends on how rare it is in the population, right? That's how we describe something as a disorder because it's not normal. And, I know in your book you talk about the narcissistic personality disorder, just briefly. You don't talk about it very much, but briefly you mention it in the book. And I latched onto it because there is a level of narcissism in every abuser, a huge level of narcissism. I've never known an abuser not to have narcissism, by the way, ever. Mm-hmm. And so I know that there is a psychology to them. It doesn't necessarily... And first of all, folks, I want you to hear when I say that they have a disorder, that doesn't excuse their behavior. So I really want people to hear me say that clearly. There is no way that excuses their behavior. Period. It does not excuse their behavior. It may explain some things about the behavior, but it does not excuse it as an abuser. Okay? And so, guys, if you're listening to me and you're manipulating the person that you're with on any level, consistently manipulating them on any level, you're wrong. I'm coming out and saying it to you. I'm looking you right in the eye, those who are watching me and those who are listening to me. I want you to hear me clearly. Guys, if you're manipulating the person that you're with, if you are controlling their money, if you are jealous all the time, if you are belittling her family, her friends, if you throw in snide remarks about she's putting on weight, or you don't like the way every time she does her hair, you look like a different person. I borrowed that from you, by the way, Susan. And if you're doing any of those things, okay, it's time to stop. I'm being dead serious. It's just time to stop. And you need to get some help too, by the way, because you're wrong. You're just dead wrong, guys. Okay, we're talking about 1 in 4 women are being abused, and abuse comes in so many different forms, right? We're all thinking about some sort of physical abuse, but you don't understand what emotional abuse does to people over and over and over and over again. You emotionally abuse people over and over and over again. What happens is they all of a sudden, it's slave treatment, and it's wrong. Okay, that was a public service message from Jay Izzo. Okay, Susan, let's get back to you. Sorry. It just made me mad. I'm sorry, but it makes me mad because it's part of, who I am too. And, I read this book and I listen to everything that you went through, and I was thinking about the other side of it. I know what you're a soda, you're a survivor of domestic abuse, but then I'm thinking about, well, who's telling the guy? Who's saying to the guy, you know what, this has got to stop?
Absolutely. And you touched on, something else that's, a few things. You could do a whole show, someone that comes from the field of psychology just on what does the narcissist look like. I actually just wrote a special piece recently on, they're talking now about overt narcissism versus covert narcissism. And for people who are listening going, what the heck is she talking about? Right. And Jay, I know but just to take a step back, when you talk about narcissists, and I'll give it to you just from an individual's perspective, because again, I lived with one for 20 years, but I don't come from the field of psychology. there's telltale signs that we can look for when we're dating people that can tip us off. So if we're not sure we're seeing the red flags of domestic abuse, you can look for things with the person you're dating, like it's just absolutely, it's the look at me person that always wants to be in the spotlight. But the things that I always kind of picked up on is could never be wrong, could never ever be wrong or own being wrong when they are wrong, or could never admit to being wrong. That's, a telltale sign for me, because I think most of us have the ability, even though we don't like to be wrong, to say, oops, my bad. And when someone can never do that, like, and just absolutely black and white can never do that, I think that's something that, can tip us off. And then I was looking recently, like I said, at what they talk about, that's your classic overt narcissist, and now they're talking about the covert narcissist, the one they say you never see coming, which can be even more, dangerous for those of us who don't want to see, the other one coming in the first place. But that the covert narcissist is also the narcissist that's out there, but they kind of sneak up on you, and they're more manipulative in that they target their victims, and just almost for the pleasure of kind of coming into their lives and manipulating the situation and abusing. And in the piece that I wrote, it's, basically the warning signs was, watch out for someone that comes in with this big tale of woe of everything's going wrong in their lives, and this is why they need you, and now you've changed their lives, and they can't live without you, and you've become so important to them. It's kind of like they latch onto you like a vampire, and you might feel great about it in the beginning, so wanted and so needed, and then all of a sudden you find out that you're slowly getting sucked into their world and becoming a victim of abuse. So I always say this at the end of the day, it's kind of my classic go-to. If something doesn't feel right, it's not right. And listen to your gut instinct, because we all have it for a reason. Mine was talking to me from the beginning, and I ignored it. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right.
Yeah, mine has been if there's any doubt, there is no doubt. It's just the way I look at it. If you've got doubt, then there is no doubt. It's wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
If there's go ahead.
I was going to say, it's another perspective is, now I'm a mom, and I'm raising 2 teenage boys. So we talk about nature and nurture, and we talk about environment, and what are the lessons that we may not have learned or we have learned? What do we tell our children? It's really simple in my house. This is how we treat people. This is how we don't. And if someone says no, we stop what we're doing immediately.
Right.
There's no question.
Right. Because no.
But I think the flip side, I'm sorry, I was going to say the flip side of that for us as parents who may be raising daughters, which I haven't, but I obviously, have grown up and, and I think I may have missed a message growing up, or maybe it wasn't given to me, is that we have to say no. And we have to walk away when something doesn't feel right. And we may not be delivering that message to this generation, and that might be a piece of what's going wrong.
I also wonder too, and there still is a thought process that, okay, I married this person, I got to stay with them. Do you think that that's part of it too? That they just feel like, well, I just got to put up with it. I got to deal with it because I married them. I just wonder in the back of my head sometimes if there's that piece that goes, right, to death do us part. So no matter for better or for worse. So yep, this is worse, but I'm just going to stay with it.
I would say 100%. 100%. I come from a family where my parents were married almost 40 years until we lost my dad. My brother and sister are each married 30 years plus. I was the first one in my family who was going to be divorced. So, I came from a family where we believe in marriage, not necessarily that we don't believe in divorce, but I would be the first one. So here I am, a standout. That's embarrassing. Oops, I failed at love.
Mm.
Okay, that's embarrassing. Without having to go into details to my family about why I failed at love, I failed. I don't like that, right? And then people have certain religious beliefs surrounding divorce, so that doesn't help, in that scenario also. And then there's a different piece of it also with abuse, and this speaks to the cycle of abuse that every single one of us experiences, and that is we did fall in love with this person, right? We fell in love with a person that had something about them that made us fall in love with them. And then they change, and they change into someone that we no longer recognize. And many of us stay because we're fighting to find the person that we initially fell in love with.
Beautiful.
And I want to speak to everyone out there that's doing that right now, because I'm this really tenacious person that doesn't like to give up a good battle. If I think that I can, if I can persevere on the other side, you're not going to find that person. Because what happens is I stayed for a very long time. This is part of my why. Why did you stay, Susan? I stayed for a really long time because I thought I could find that Prince Charming that I had fallen in love with. And what I ended up understanding in the end was he was an illusion. And once that illusion disappeared and I got to see the person that I really was with, that's who I was with. And I didn't want to accept that. I wanted to find the other person. And he never came back. That's a huge part of the cycle of abuse.
Wow. Do you realize that, Susan, you and I have been on for an hour almost?
Have we really?
Yes, we have. We've almost been on for an hour. And I know you got a hard 3 here, and so I've got 3 minutes. And so here's what I do with, by the way, thank you. This has been great. I've enjoyed it so much. You've been so helpful to so many people, and I thank you. So what I do with all my guests, because we got 3 minutes left, because I know you have to run. Okay, 2 minutes left. I always ask every one of my guests, okay, if you could do a summary and help people find a new direction when it comes to domestic abuse, what would be Susan Sparks, author of Sparks in Love, what would be your new direction for the folks out there?
Absolutely. This is something I hope everybody hears me on. It is never, ever, ever, ever too late to stop where you are and start again. Everyone has the right to claim a new and better life, and it doesn't really matter what's happened up until this point, because if you start again, you get to design your new life, and your abuser doesn't get to tell you what your new life looks like, and that is really cool. That's what I would say.
That is awesome. She's Susan Sparks. The book is called Sparks in Love. You can get it on Amazon and ask for it at your favorite bookstore. It's going to be available, I promise you. It is a read that is powerful, and it's life-changing, I promise you. Make a plan, folks. If you're in an abusive relationship, make a plan. Get yourself some help. Get yourself professional help, because it's the professionals that's going to help you get you out where you're at right now. Susan Sparks, thank you so much for your time. I am grateful for you. I'm grateful for your work. The website is called thesoda-pop.com. You can get all sorts of information and it's free, and she is providing all this information for any of you. If you know somebody in domestic abuse situation or you're in it, will you please, please, please either go or send them to thesoda-pop.com. It's important. I'm going to put this on the jizzo.com website. It'll be also on every write-up on every podcast so that you can access it as well. Susan Sparks, thank you so much for being on A New Direction. I appreciate you so much.
Jay, thank you so much. I'm beyond grateful. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Me too.
All right, everybody, this is the show. Listen, could it get any better? Could it absolutely get any better than that? It's a tough subject matter. I totally agree. Domestic abuse is a hard subject matter. I'm going to be the first one to say it. But it's real. And it's all around us. 1 in 4 people are living in some sort of a domestic abuse situation. You may or you may not even know it. They're the people who are at work. There are people who you go play with. They're people that you go shopping with. They're people that are in the grocery store. They're rich, they're poor, they're middle class, but they are in a domestic abusive situation. It's my responsibility, I believe, part of my calling, part of my responsibility to make sure that we bring subject matter like this to light, because we can't avoid it, we can't neglect it, we can't ignore it, because it's real and it's around us. And I believe, as part of being part of the human race and being part of who I am, I believe it's all of our responsibility, every one of us, to make sure that we are doing whatever we can to help people get out of an abusive situation. It's what we are called to do, I believe. It's what we're meant to do. And so, folks, if you're one of those people who are listening to the show or watch the show that is in a domestic abuse situation, will you please go and get yourself some help? Please get a professional help. Please go to thesoda-pop.com. SODA stands for Survivors of Domestic Abuse. Please go get yourself some help. If you know someone, would you please send them there to become a SODA, because we need more survivors like Susan Sparks, and that can tell their message and help more people get out of this, because the numbers are way too high. So, folks, thank you so much for watching the show. You have, and by the way, somebody just posted here that it's real. My sister left her abuser a few years back, and so thanks for sharing that, people who are online right now, live. Folks, this is the show, and I know you like the humor and the laughter and everything, but sometimes we have to do the right things, and this was the right thing to do. And so, with that said, the show is brought to you by Inline Business Brokers Associates. We thank Inline greatly for everything that they do for us, because they're terrific in helping people either sell a business, buy a business. Please go to the website. Tell them you heard about Inline at anewdirection.com with Jay Izzo, or New Direction with Jay Izzo. Their website's enlign.com, and you can find them there and get more information. All that said, folks, be inspired, because here's the deal. When you're inspired, you inspire someone else, and when you inspire someone else, they in turn can inspire others. And when we do that, what happens is we have just a much better place to live in, and it's a greater world all the way around. I'm going to see you next week with somebody else who's going to be fabulous. So I hope you join me again next week. So until then, ciao, everybody.
When you lost your confidence and the answers don't make sense, you got to keep your hope alive. You got to know you can survive. This is your time to fly. A new direction, a brand new day. A new direction, things are gonna change. You can find the strength to go a different way, yeah. The time has come. Your dreams will take you places you have never been before. Find your passion, find your strength.